Hey guys, welcome back to the Reading Stack. I'm Hunter, and today I have a wonderful read for y'all, but more than a read, I would say it is more of a study I'll be sharing with you. It is the book Genesis by Derek Kidner. It is an Old Testament commentary by Tyndall, and it was first published in 1967. Now this wonderful commentary is just a real good deep dive. It's a real good introduction to Genesis and understanding the scope of it, and then a walking commentary through the verses, the chapters, and the events of Genesis, the first book of the Bible. And boy, this is a really good commentary. It is, nearly 60 years old, but boy, is it, relevant. Just as Genesis is still a very relevant book after thousands of years. We've kind of explained what is it. It's a commentary. It is studying the words, the narrative, the characters, and the places in Genesis to bring that out to someone that is a Bible student, a Bible teacher, a preacher, somebody that wants to just understand the literature better. It makes it very common and easy what, it brings us into the context to fully understand all the events in the grammatic sense and the historical sense, just to essentially just make sense of the text and things that may be lost or not as obvious to us. So starting with that, I want to read 3 quotes that I think really stick out as powerful, and these are all in the introduction of the book before the real commentary begins. It reads on page 13, chapters 1 to 11 of Genesis describe 2 opposite progressions. First, God's orderly creation to its climax in man as a responsible and blessed being, and then the disintegrating work of sin to its first great anticlimax in the corrupt world of the flood, and its second in the folly of Babel. Just chapters 1 through 11 of Genesis. A lot happens in those chapters. A lot of cataclysms. Now on page 32, our second quote, and this is discussing the theology of Genesis, the study of God. What does it say about God? Who is He? What attributes does He have? And it begins with God. From the outset, Genesis confronts us with the living God, unmistakably personal. The verbs of the opening chapter express an energy of mind, will, and judgment, which excludes all question of our conceiving God in the category of the it instead of the thou, to borrow E. Brunner's phrase. And the book continues to make this emphasis in its account of man's constitution in God's image, and of God's persistent concern for a personal relationship with His servants. So that's very powerful on how Genesis begins showing God's character is not as the impersonal it as a thing, but as the personal he or you, and even as God refers, self-references in Genesis, we, us, which is very interesting. And then the last quote I want to share is still on page 32 and goes into page 33. It begins, "The creation story has settled the matter. Subsequent history confirms that God is as much the master of events in the rise and fall of nations in Genesis 15, 14, 16, and Genesis 25, 23, as in the conception of a child or the call of a follower. Time and space, sin and even death, Genesis 5:24, are no match for Him, whether He is working through obvious miracles or hidden providence. And this is the faith not only of the narrator, but of the chief characters, who declare Him the maker and judge of all, in Genesis 14, Genesis 18, and the disposer of the most intractable of situations, Genesis 45. Thirdly, His ways are perfect. The series of expulsions and cataclysms in Genesis declare that heaven can make no truce with sin. Whether it is the Godward sin of unbelief and presumption, as at Eden and Babel, or the manward wrongs of violence, lust, and treachery. Yet his righteous wrath is also grief, Genesis 6. His judgments are sweetened with mercy, Genesis 3, Genesis 4, Genesis 6, Genesis 19, etc., and are slow to fall, Genesis 15. His concern for the sinner's reclaiming is discussed below, section C3. Equally, if his justice has love in it, his love contains moral demand. There is a trace of challenge in it, even in the earthly paradise, on Genesis 2, 8 through 17. And Abraham was to find over a long period, and supremely at Mount Moriah, chapter 22, that to be the friend of God demanded even if it repaid everything he had. So a lot of the theology of Scripture in the first book is introduced, and later it becomes better unpacked, elucidated. God explained better a lot of the mysteries being resolved that Genesis introduces, but just a huge book that the rest of the theology, that the corpus, that the Bible has, the collection of 66 books over multiple millennia, that they cover so much of what was introduced in Genesis, not where some things come out of left field, but generally it is subsequently expounded, shown, and revealed in greater detail a lot of the stuff that's hinted at or introduced in Genesis. So those are some of the quotes to really show what's in the book, and that's really all that was in the introduction. Later it goes into the specific verses and explaining what's going on in the action of Genesis. And I guess what I want to share is how I came upon the book. I've read and have on my bookshelf behind me quite a few Tim Keller books. I actually only have 2 right now. I did have a lot on my Kindle. But he quotes very profusely from Derek Kidner, who made this commentary, Genesis right here. And seeing how much he quoted, I was like, well, I want to read the authors I've read, their reading list, who they've read from, to really get a gleaning into their mind and into the material they use and have influenced them. And so this is one of the first stops I've made, wanting to read Kidner's commentaries, and Genesis is the first book of the Bible, so why not? And I've been thoroughly surprised. Just the powerful introduction to this book, really the focus on God and His wonder and awesomeness, His love, just about brought me to tears reading this book. So really just the introduction of this book is so beautifully written. And then the commentary as it goes on is so great and explanatory for helping somebody that may not understand. And I sure learned a lot from it, of what's going on in Genesis, a lot of the cultural information that a Western reader in the 21st century, that we might bypass these things that were very obvious to the Jewish people and ancients. So very valuable book in that way. And should it be on your... Does Genesis, the commentary, belong on your bookshelf if you're a reader, if you're a serious student of the Bible? I would say yes, if you're wanting a book to know more about Genesis, of course. If you're wanting a book that's very short, it took me about 2 days. It's just right at 224 pages, so not lengthy at all. Very short, concise, great introduction, and in the specific introduction in the book, it talks a lot about the controversies, paleontological questions of authorship, as it's attributed to Moses's either writing or oversight, and so it delves into a lot of these questions that literary critics and different people have raised over the years. And in this book, written in 1967, it addresses those really well. A lot of the stuff I've read in more recent years, being alive in my time, have really covered a lot of the stuff he does. Still very relevant, good answers. And so it's a very good read, and if you want to know more about Genesis, more theologically about God, then what a great read for that. And Reasons why you wouldn't like it, well, if you really wanted a super deep dive into Genesis, you would probably want something a little bit bigger. And this book, I don't think is for that, but it's very easy, quite simple. And Genesis is 50. I think there's 50 chapters in Genesis, and so it's a very big book in the Bible, one of the longest. And so you definitely could have a book that was much bigger, much deeper dive. So if you wanted that, then maybe I wouldn't get this one. But Kidner, what he does study and just brings out is so important. It doesn't get into minutia or things that the more novice or casual reader couldn't get. So he's great for that and explaining the brass tacks of the situation in Genesis and what's going on. So I think it's very perfect for that. If you've never read a commentary on Genesis, if you've never read Genesis, this might be a great companion through your journey in reading and studying Genesis and studying the Bible. And lessons. What lessons can we get from this book? Well, overall, Kidner, in looking at Genesis, he really brings out just the greatness of God in human history, that Genesis kind of shows us these parallel realities that run through. And Kidner really does a great job of bringing these out. That man, as mankind advances forward, there's like two schools or two divisions between people, and one person is they pursue God, they pursue morality through the history of man going forward, and they seek to pursue benevolence and things like that. But then there's another part of man that wants to advance full steam ahead, and they go, so to speak, outside those guardrails of morality and faith and respect for God and for fellow man. And it always becomes a train wreck, as Genesis definitely shows that, you see the parallel between Abraham and Lot, that both were believers, both were considered righteous people. But Lot, he really wanted you could say, the prosperity, the career success, that his eyes and for fame guided him towards Sodom and Gomorrah. And Genesis 18 and 19, I believe, you get around there, you see some definitely huge cataclysm from that decision. Whereas Abraham, he doesn't pursue that. He gets rewarded with great wealth and riches, but he lives a life for God, that he's the example, though he's called the father of the faithful. So I think a big thing to ask in that is the lesson, are we those people that we have that simple faith in God, that it keeps us back from the harm, the dangers that are out there, the wickedness, the harm we could do to others? Or are we people that are kind of unrestrained? We don't have those principles to guide us. Live life like it's a sandbox video game, like the world is yours, as opposed to seeing ourselves here put for a purpose and not to waste that precious time we have. So anyways, maybe that's not the clearest lesson in the way I put it, but it's just a big lesson, like, as I think Bob Dylan had the song, like, you've got to serve somebody. And so the good question is, who are we serving, and what kind of a person are we? Are we on that line of people like Noah, who was this picture of salvation and a faithful man? Or are we like the people that were destroyed in the flood, that just were involved in all kinds of violence and evil? It's just, as like Solzhenitsyn said, is the dividing line between good and evil runs through every human heart, and that's it's a very tough challenge to really think, who are we? What are we living for? Well, guys, I hope y'all got a lot out of this book review of this commentary, Genesis by Derek Kidner. It's a great read, and if you're interested in getting into the thick of Genesis, but in a short and very simple read, I think this would be perfect for you. Thank you guys for watching. We'll have more videos and more book reviews for y'all soon. Y'all have a wonderful, blessed day. Bye.